Jazakallah khair, Sabrina. It's a real honor and privilege for me to be with you today. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashraf al-anbiya'i wal mursaleen. Sayyiduna wa maulana wa habibina wa shafi'ana Muhammadin Sadiq al-Amin. Rahmatul lil Alameen wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam tasliman ajma'in. All praise is due to God, the Creator, the Merciful, the Compassionate, the one who created us out of love so that we could seek His love. And we bear witness on this blessed day of Jummah in the blessed month of Zulhijjah that the Al-Habib, the chosen one, the beloved, Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam is God's servant and last messenger. And in his example and in the example of his noble family and righteous companions, we find the ethical and moral framework for a good life and a good akhirah, a good eternity. Thank you so much, Sabrina, and it's a real honor, as I said, and a privilege to be with you all today. I know that anytime I'm invited and welcomed into your beautiful space with this beautiful community, I'm always conscious of those who came before us to create these spaces, those who sacrificed to create these spaces, who worked hard to create these spaces. Students, of course, our leaders, and of course, preeminent among them, Imam Sohaib Sultan. And, I was thinking a lot about Imam Sohaib today as I was thinking about what to share with you and what I'd like to reflect on. And, so much has been said, will continue to be said, and I think a lifetime will be spent remembering, calling to mind, smiling, laughing, shedding tears over the incredible legacy that Sohaib Bhai left us, and to witness in the life of a human being we touched and felt and were close to the signs of wilaya, the signs of friendship with God. In my last gathering and meeting and time with Imam Sohaib, some 10 days before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called him back to the divine presence, Sohaib Bhai spoke a lot about joy, and all of you know this because he was speaking to all of you about this, about joy, that there was a need to recenter joy, happiness in our understanding of Islam. And he spoke vociferously, as passionately as his body would allow him, against the religion of fear, the religion that causes us to be scared, frightened of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that makes us frightened of an impending punishment and doesn't give us the space to remember, to celebrate, and to affirm joy and the capacity of God to be merciful, and the capacity of God to forgive, and the capacity of God, endless and eternal, to forever lift us out of the shadows into a state of clarity, into a state of deep awareness, and into a state of mercy, which ultimately results, as Imam Sohaib and all those around him have shown us, into a state of service and commitment to not only their faith community, but to the entire ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is all of humanity in all of the times now and all of the times to come. Today, as we're in the heart of the first days of Zulhijjah, and as those few pilgrims who are able to be in the holy precincts are arriving in those precincts, And we are witnessing again for another year a extraordinarily different Hajj, an extraordinarily different pilgrimage. I was reminded this morning by someone actually who I was interviewing for a podcast that I work on, of something really beautiful, and it connected, for me at least, to the beautiful days that we are in, and that's what I'd like to reflect with you for the next 15 minutes or so. I've titled today's reflection, Looking for God's Secrets in the Best of Days. And the individual who I was interviewing this morning is a remarkable person. Some of you may know his work, Khalid Al-Bay, a Sudanese cartoonist, activist, who uses his art to highlight and to focus our eyes and our hearts on the incredible inequalities, injustices that exist in our world, and who uses his art and his political cartoons to tell the story of people who are often forgotten, marginalized, considered small or insignificant. And he raises their voices and tells the story, remarkable stories of not merely their resilience, a much overused word, but tells us of their incredible agency. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. To do good in spite of challenges that I know I cannot even begin to truly imagine. Khalid Al-Bay shared with me a proverb of sorts, or reflections of sorts from the Arabic tradition. And I can't say whether this is a saying of one of the saints, either man or woman. Maybe this is linked back to the prophetic tradition or elsewhere, but he said something really beautiful, and I want to share it with you and let that be the beginning of the reflection on these days of Zulhijjah. Khalid said that in Arabic they say that God's secret is often found in the things that are seemingly small and insignificant. That God's secret is to be found in the things that seem to us small and insignificant. And that really struck me for a number of reasons. And it struck me particularly as I started to think about what is the source. What is the source of the story of the Hajj? What are we commemorating when we commemorate these best of days? What are the things that we are marking when we go to the holy precincts and we go to the sacred precincts and we find in those sacred precincts rituals which we perform and that we undertake? What is the source of this? And the source leads us back, of course, to the first of creation, because the tradition tells us that this valley of Baqa, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes it in the Quran, is the place where the first symbolic house of God was built, where the first place of worship was established. That we are told in our tradition that these are the lands, this is the geography in which the first human beings came and asked forgiveness of the Creator for their indiscretion. This is also the place where our tradition tells us where humanity itself begins. And what does it begin with? It begins with an act of forgiveness between Adam and Hawa, alayhim salatu wassalam, and the establishment of this place, of a place which would focus our attention. The tradition tells us that these first human beings, blessed by God as the first of our creation, witnessed with their own eyes the circumambulation of angels around the Baytul Ma'mur. around this axis mundi, which connects creator and creation. That this kind of remarkable scene took place, and in a way is in our spiritual DNA. We are all in some ways witness to this because our mother and our father, alayhi salatu wasalam, were witness to this. And it takes us back even further, doesn't it, my friends, my sisters, my brothers? It takes us back even further, doesn't it, to that incident, to that scene, rather, that is described in the Quran, that day of Alastu bi Rabbikum, the day we were asked, am I not your Lord, by the creator of the heavens and the earth? And that you and I, in our soul form, in our spiritual form, stood before the magnificent beauty, the magnificent power, the magnificent generosity, the magnificent love, which brought us forth from nothingness into soul creation. And in that moment, what could each of our souls say other than Qalu Bala? Absolutely, without a doubt, we affirm that you are our Lord. Our scholars tell us that on that day, the sound of all the souls responding was like beautiful music. And that all of us carry that resonance of Alastu bi Rabbikum within us. Imagine then how magnificent the sound must have been. How clearly Adam and Hawa must have heard the resonance of Alastu bi Rabbikum on the day that they were in that blessed valley, which is now called Mecca, and at the heart of which is now the Kaaba. My dear friends, God's secret is to be found in the seemingly small and insignificant things. When our mother Hajar was left in this valley, desolate, concerned, desiring only that her beautiful son Ismail should survive and thrive despite this great challenge that she had been placed in. Her act is not an act of resilience. Her act is an act of agency. Her run between Safa and Marwa, how seemingly insignificant. A woman from a lower class, left as part of a very serious and difficult divine test, left in this desolate place. She picks up. She has agency. She trusts in the divine and says, my son will be safe here in the shadow of this particular mountain, and I am going to go. She runs. Those steps in the sand that probably disappear after a few moments. Running part of the way. Walking fast part of the way. Trying to conserve her energy. Seeking energy from the depths of her spirit so that she may find some water, some food, some assistance for her son Ismail. Isn't God's secret found in the seemingly insignificant things, the little kicks of baby Ismail on the sand, so that when Hajar, God be pleased with her, returns and finds water welling up where his heels have hit the sand, the seemingly insignificant kicks of a frightened child, of a child who can't perceive his mother next to him. And yet the angels are close by. The divine presence is looking upon this. And the gift emerges, the water which has not stopped flowing ever since. That Zamzam that we drink today, the fruit of a mother's love and a child's innocent kicking, or a child's desperate kicking against the sand. And a gift emerges. The story of Hajar, in some ways, we have been blessed in these past many years because of the work of so many scholars, particularly women scholars, who have forced us, encouraged us, compelled us to re-examine these divine narratives again, and to find in Sayyidah Hajar a kind of spiritual leadership and spiritual vision that is universal and is accessible by each and every one of us. So that so many of the rites of the pilgrimage itself link back to her moment of seeking agency in God's help, of not remaining still, of not merely relying on Allah, but demonstrating that the reliance on Allah is met with activating the agency which God has given to do something. And then to find herself in that place in a society obviously patriarchal, as a woman alone without her partner, and in this case, without her partner, the Prophet Ibrahim, upon whom be peace, she forges a place for her in that nomadic tribal society. So much so that that place where the well emerges becomes a place where life forms, and where a city is raised, and where the house of worship is founded again, and where spirituality returns, where the axis mundi, which was always there, is restored to human vision and human sight and human experience. God's secret is found in the seemingly small and insignificant things. The second reflection which came to my heart as I was thinking about looking for God's secrets in the best of days was how unusual, as we said already, this Hajj season is, rather. How unusual it is to witness not millions, but maybe thousands of people who are able to now come. That there's sadness amongst so many, isn't there? The sadness that we cannot experience the Hajj as we were able to before. Those of us who were planning to go on the Hajj, those of us who are planning to visit the noble precincts, those of us who wanted to be in Arafah, we'll talk about Arafah in just one moment, that those who wanted to be in Arafah cannot be there. And there's some thought that this situation may last a number of years, that we are not necessarily entering the pandemic after times, but another phase of this great challenge which God Almighty has laid before us and in front of us and around us. And yet, when I think about Zulhijjah, and when I think about the best of days, and I think it's worth pausing for a second. And I don't know how it was for you, but certainly growing up in a Muslim community in suburban Toronto, the days of Zulhijjah were important. The day of Arafah certainly was important. It was a day of fasting and of prayer. The day of Eid, of course, the day of celebration and sacrifice. So important, so talked about. But I can't actually remember the community as a whole celebrating the days of Zulhijjah. You know, I can't remember I can't certainly remember online guides. There was no online, but I can't remember there being like this sense that, okay, the days of Zulhijjah are really important, but they're actually really, really important. And these are the things that one should be doing. Maybe those things happen naturally. But I've certainly felt over the last few years, and this year in particular, I have to say, and maybe that's a result of the pandemic and us living these kinds of hybrid lives as people are talking about, that there's been this great emphasis about understanding Zulhijjah as the best of days, the revival of the traditions of the Prophet, the revival of the tradition of the Prophet's family and the righteous companions that mark this time as an important time and as a sacred time. And I think that's amazing. And I found that my own understanding of this time has grown. I do think that there is a certain commercialization, if I may, to these days of Zulhijjah. That's not a knock at anyone in particular, but more a sense of where sometimes the tenor of the community is at. And I noticed a lot of fundraising emails in these days of Zulhijjah. And of course, this is a time when we should give charity abundantly, and I hope all of us are doing so. And even the small amount given with sincerity can be greater than large amounts given with a lack of sincerity. So it's all about our sincerity. But certainly I think that's a part of it. The part of recognizing these days as also days of giving has amplified its importance. But just like Ramadan for those who cannot fast, Zulhijjah for those who cannot be on Hajj sometimes can be a challenge. It becomes an abstraction. We're not there. It's even more abstract now because we can't see the millions of people there. It's not being covered the way it may have been covered in past years. And of course, for us as believers, that shouldn't be a problem. Because these days of Zulhijjah, these festive days, as we are told, just like the days of Ramadan and other sacred times in our calendar, these are indeed sacred times. As much as the rites of Hajj take place in a sacred place, the time itself is sacred. Our friends who believe and adhere to the principles and the spirituality of Celtic Christianity often speak in their tradition about something that is called the thin place, or they speak about thin places. And when you ask, what is a thin place? What are the thin places? It is those places where the separation between the creator and the created has become thin, translucent. You can see through it. These are places where the temporal and the eternal meet, so that one can begin to perceive, feel, make out, feel the presence of the eternal. We know that we are always living in a thin place. Our tradition tells us that God is closer to us than our jugular vein. Has God ever been absent from you that you could not seek him out? This is what we are told. And this is what we know to be haqq, reality. And yet in our perceptions, there is no doubt that at times we feel, because of the circumstances that we're in, because of the environment that we're in, because of the situation that we are in, we feel far. We feel removed. We feel disconnected. And then God gives us these times like Dhul Hijjah, like Ramadan that came before and other times. And these are times where we can perceive the reality that is. That's the thin place for us. And that's the thin time for us. This is that thin time where we reach out and we can touch the eternal. It's so close. The blessings are so close. The angels are so close. Worship is made easy for us. We are called to remembrance and worship and reflection and community. We are called to read and recite and call upon our hearts the story of Hajar and her son, her agency, her sense of sacrifice, her desire to build a community for her son so that he could live in safety. And that was her gift to all of us. That this is a thin time, that this time has been made thin for us, that just as the Hujjaj would be in that thin place where God and the angels and the eternal feel close, let's all enter into that place in our hearts, because we are in that thin time. The time, this makan and zaman. The makan is thin and the zaman is thin, and it's sacred. There's so much hurma in this time, sacredness in this time, inviolability in this time. And so we are not shut off from, or excluded from, or removed from the blessings of Zulhijjah, and in fact, the blessings of the pilgrimage itself. The blessings of the pilgrimage itself. We can embrace all of that because we are in that thin time when the eternal feels very, very close. And I think I would be remiss if I didn't say that for many around the world, our fellow human beings in Indonesia and in the Philippines and in India, subcontinent, Africa, and the global South, where COVID and its Delta variants are ravaging people. Every day, those of us who have family and friends in these regions brace ourselves, don't we, as we open our social media, as we open our messaging apps, because we know we're going to hear about another family member who's ill, another person who's sick, another person who has been called back to the presence of their Lord. May God have mercy on those all who have passed. This is a thin time in more ways than one. And maybe this whole pandemic has been a thin time. Maybe this whole pandemic has been laid upon us as a time when death is close, where the eternal is closer than it has ever been for so many of us, where it feels like death is hanging around. And yet it is in these thin times when the eternal is close. And how must Hajar have felt in that desolate desert, the incredible heat of the day, the incredible freezing cold of the night, without much. It must have been a thin place and a thin time. The eternal must have felt close. What did Hajar, upon whom be peace, do? She ran and searched and sought safety for her son, because she saw the future, and the future had her son and her in it. And the future had that son being given prophecy and building nations. That's the vision of Hajar. That is the vision of Hajar. That's the vision of a mother. That's the vision of a true leader. We're not shut off from any of that, my dear friends. So let us embrace, I say to myself first, let us embrace this time as a sacred time, as a thin time, when the eternal is close and where God's mercy is always accessible, and we should be more aware of it at this moment. Finally, my friends, to conclude, I offer this third reflection. We often speak of the day of Arafah, the day of standing on that great plain, as the day of reckoning. It is truly the heart of the Hajj, and at least the culmination of all those rites, all of that effort, all of that sweat, all of that sacrifice. You are now in this place, standing on Jabal Rahmah, the Mount of Mercy, praying to Azza wa Jal, God Almighty, great and glorious, merciful, compassionate, generous, kind, loving, and graceful, to be forgiven, to begin again and to begin anew, to be cleansed, to be reborn. This is not just a moment of redemption. It is not just a moment of salvation. It is indeed a moment of recreation. Kun fayakun, be and it is. That is the divine power that surrounds us at every moment. On Jabal Rahmah, we become acutely aware of it. On the day of Arafah, we become acutely aware of it. The transformative power of this moment. But the fact is that that transformative power exists in God's power all the time. La taqnatu min rahmatillah, doesn't the Quran tell us? Why do you despair? Qul ya ibadi, say, oh my servant, my beloved servant, my servant, the ownership of God, ibadi, Not the worshiper, my worshiper. Not the penitent, my penitent. Not the one who does sujood, the one who does sujood for me, my prostrator. Qul ya ibadi, the language so beautiful, so intimate. God is being so intimate with us. La taqnatu min rahmatillah. Why do you despair of the mercy of God? For all of those things that you have done, know that the mercy of God is close. It's at hand. We are forever in the thin time and in the thin place because God has never been absent. Why did I think that forgiveness wasn't possible? Why did I think I couldn't be corrected? Why did I think that all hope was lost? When was God absent? When was God absent? When God is creating and sustaining in every moment within and every moment within a moment. Arafah teaches us that not only is transformation possible, it's available, it's accessible, it's present. Arafat is not the hill that we go to die on. You have this saying, this phrase, which I find great value in at times, about the hill to die on, right? Comes from the Christian tradition. Arafat is not the hill that we die on. If Allah chooses to take us on Arafat, indeed, what a great gift to pass in that blessed place and to be returned to God in a state of asking for God's maghfirah. But Arafat is the hill that we go to come alive on. Arafah is the hill that we go to come alive on. Because the transformative possibilities of forgiveness, the transformative possibilities of turning to Allah, tawbah, the transformative possibilities of gathering with fellow believers in full equality, men and women, people together, whatever they are, however they are, wherever they come from, appealing to God's mercy, that place, Arafah, is the hill that we come alive on. And you and I may not be able to be in Arafah this year, but let's this year make that day of Zulhijjah, the day of Arafah, the day that we come alive. Let's come alive on Arafah through the asking of forgiveness, because we may not stand on the physical Arafah, but we can stand on the spiritual Arafah. We can stand in this sacred time, in this in time, and ask forgiveness. I ask myself, first of all, for all of the things that I need to correct, the things that I need to correct in my own worship, in my own soul, the things that I need to correct in my relationships, the things that I need to strengthen in my own familiar relationships, the things we have to do better on with those who we love the most, with our parents and our siblings and our spouses and our children, and those who walk this path with us, the things that we need to do better with our friends. All of these things, Ya Allah, we need help. I need help. Every day we're taught how weak we are, how much development we need, how much room there is to grow. But isn't that magnificent? That we have life and we have realization that we have room to grow, so much room. And where do we take all of Allah's maghfirah? Where do we take all of Allah's mercy that is granted to us? That when we come alive on the spiritual hill of Arafah or the actual hill of Arafah, what happens to us? That we become servants of the most merciful, and the servants of the most merciful serve the creation of the most merciful. Isn't that the aspiration? Isn't that what we are called to? Isn't that the proof of God's mercy? The merciful ones are granted mercy by the most merciful. Be merciful to those who are on the earth, and the one who is above the heavens will be merciful to you, says the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Isn't that how we actualize? Isn't that how we make real? Isn't that how we operationalize the gift of Arafah? When we come alive on the day of Arafah, when we experience forgiveness on the day of Arafah, when we become connected and reconnected to the mercy of God, the messengers of God, the people of God, women and men, the family of the noble messenger, the righteous companions of the noble messenger, the great people who came after them, who preserved right up until this moment, where we have been witness to people like Imam Sohaib Sultan in our lives, and we can say that we lived a life in which we met a friend of God, we met a waliullah. And so what happens to us? Is it merely to say that forgiveness is a state that we're in? Or is it a state of activation? It's not a resting state, it's an active state. So let Arafah this year be for me, Ya Allah, a time to come alive, to seek restitution, to make restitution where I've done wrong to others, and to go forward into the world as an agent and as a means of mercy. And this is what we mean to conclude when we say on the days of Eid and on the days of Zulhijjah, Labbaik Allahumma Labbaik. At your service, O God, at your service. There is no partner that is set up with you. In your oneness, your majesty, your perfect mercy, your everlasting kindness, your generosity, we're here. Labbaik. At your service. At your service. What's the service? That's what Hajj teaches us. That's what this time teaches us. Take the blessings of the thin places. Let's take the blessings, all of us, of the thin places, of the sacred time, of the sacred space. And let's light that fire in us that powers the engine of service. Because if we experience God's mercy, then it should flow right out of us to others. If we experience God's kindness, let kindness flow right out of us. And you know, when it isn't flowing out, when there's frustration and bitterness and anger and hatred, that's a sign for ourselves, with ourselves, in conversation with ourselves, that we have to keep turning. And God knows that turning happens all the time, every day. And the Hijjah, these best of days, tell us, look for God's secrets in the things that seem insignificant and the things that seem small. Look at it for in the little moments of our lives. Because we'll find that if we are not enacting, if we are not living God's merciful example and the merciful example of the Prophet and his family and his righteous people, then indeed there is profound work to be done. It's a reminder of how much we have to do. And all of these things, of course, happen simultaneously. The times call for it. We don't have time to rest, so to speak. Our children, our communities, our masajid, our neighbors, our friends, people of our faith, people of no faith, the vision of our Creator, the vision of our messenger, the vision of the righteous ones, women, men, the people of piety, is to always be in service and to always seek tawbah. Jazakumullahu khairan. I apologize, Sabrina, for going over. I just realized the time. Please forgive me, friends, for overstaying. And may these days of Zulhijjah be blessed for you. May they be Mubarak for you. May you experience all the joys and happiness that those on Hajj will experience. And may this time be a time of us coming to life again. And Eid Mubarak to each and every one of you and to your families. And special du'as to all of our relatives, our loved ones, our elders, our ancestors, and our young ones who have been taken during this time. May they find peace in the barzakh, in the company of the righteous, and the company of angels. And may we be raised with them on the last day. Jazakallahu khairan.
Ameen, Jazakallah khair, mashallah, that was so beautiful, just so many gems. Really, really appreciate you taking the time to share with us, Sidi Abdul-Rahman. It's such a joy and pleasure to be with you and really taking in a lot of those profound lessons that you shared with us, mashallah. It's really beautiful. You're welcome to overstay anytime, and you're always welcome in this space, in this community. It's really nice to see you again. Jazakallah khair.
It's wonderful to see you, Sabrina, and du'as for the new chaplain who's coming in to Princeton. We're so excited for Imam Khalil and for your community. He is a really amazing, blessed human being, and a man who will truly take up the mantle of the work that Imam Sohaib and all of you have done over the years. I'm just so excited. We're so excited here at Yale and elsewhere to see the incredible and beautiful things that are going to continue to come from your community.
Inshallah. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And now I'd like to invite a dear sister from the community to lead us in dua, and then we'll close with the adhan. I'd like to invite Sajda Nuriddin.
Assalam'alaykum. Thank you so much. That was so beautiful. Like Sabrina said, so many gems. Alhamdulillah, I'm honored to have just sat here and listened to it. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزينة عرشه ومداد كلماته. Transcendent is Allah, and praise belongs to Him, equal to the number of His creation, the degree of His good pleasure, the weight of His throne, and the number of His words. Peace and blessings upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and all the prophets and all the believers since the beginning of time. Ya Rabbi, forgive us for the trespasses we knowingly and unknowingly commit against you. We know that we are only forgiven through your infinite mercy. In this blessed month of Dhul Hijjah, please purify our intentions. Give us the drive to give extra, to be extra patient, devote extra time in your remembrance. And Ya Rabbi, we ask that you accept our acts of ibadah, be they large or small. O Allah, cover the new chaplain, Imam Khalil Abdullah, at Princeton Muslim Life with your good grace. Grant him success in his endeavors, ease in the transition for himself and his family, and joy in his new journey. May we welcome him with the reception deserving of a new and beloved member of our family. O Allah, please place safety in and around our homes. Please provide the whole of our ummah with quality, safe homes for retreat and quality food to eat. Bless those with an abundance to share generously and lovingly and to be thankful for these many mercies that we often take for granted. Ya Allah, bless us to be protected from the conflict and the violence of war, of poverty, of mental, spiritual, emotional, physical abuse that is so prevalent in our societies, in our communities, in our families, and even within ourselves. Bless those who are struggling with these endeavors, with these issues. Bless them to be patient. Allow them to patiently persevere in the knowledge and the understanding that you are most merciful. O Allah, protect us from the ailments, the viruses and diseases that deteriorate our good health, and those ailments and viruses and diseases that do the same or worse to our hearts. Al-Ghafar, shower our families in nur, illuminate the graves of those who have passed away, including our beloved Imam Sohaib Sultan. Bless them with angels and send them the gentle breezes of Jannah for comfort. Ya Sabur, give us patience with each other, our spouses, parents, siblings, children, friends, and companions. May we follow the example of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in gentleness and in firmness, and may our interactions with each other be worthy of the delights of the garden. Grant us believing, righteous children who grow into believing, righteous adults who build healthy communities of their own. Ya Al-Wadud, surround those who seek marriage with love and hope and send them the appropriate opportunities to develop joyful relationships with spouses who are their equal and who may be excellent helpmates in home, parenting, and most importantly, worshiping Allah. Surround our divorced brothers and sisters with love and hope and the perseverance to maintain good, healthy ties with their former spouses. Allow them to co-parent in a way that is respectful of each other and kind to any children they may have that may have come from their union. Bless us as a community to be supportive of their efforts and to be the village that helps in the raising of these children in the best of ways. When their hearts are ready, Ya Rabbi, please provide them with new spouses of equal character who may be helpmates for them and a safety for their children. Ya Allah, surround our marriages in love and hope. Protect us from the influences of a society that does not care about healthy marriages or families. Bless us to be the base from which believing righteous children grow, and bless us to fight for each other and with each other for the sanctity and firmness of our relationships. Ya Al-Mujib, we beg of you to hear our prayers and to send your abundant good. Guide us aright and straighten out our affairs. Ameen, Ameen, Ameen.